Today, we're going to talk about the 5 why process. There's 4 steps to the 5 why process. The first step is to define the problem statement. Now, Kara, in her previous lesson, spoke about how to define a problem statement. All the other things that she spoke about also remain true. Things like we need to approach this from a process perspective. We need to involve the right team members, ask the right questions, and properly define the problem statement. The second step in the 5 why process is to ask why approximately 5 times. Now, this is sometimes more than 5 times, sometimes less than 5 times. It just depends on when you hit a point of no additional credible path. So what does that mean? That means when you continue to ask why and you start diverting away from your problem statement, that's the best key to understand there's no reason to ask why any more times. And the last step that I would recommend is once you complete your 5 whys, is to walk backwards by asking therefore. And I'll explain that with an example coming up. So what are some of the benefits of the 5 why? First and foremost, it's a very simple approach. Anyone can do this. It's the same technique that children use to learn when they're young. Those of you who've had children probably understand this. They keep asking why, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. Another benefit of the 5 whys is it helps you evaluate the process. It helps you capture a snapshot of that team's knowledge and what exactly caused that particular problem. You can also use it anywhere, anytime. It really doesn't involve any advanced knowledge, any special software, any other tools. You simply ask why. And finally, it can be done in your head. I use the 5 whys all the time. Whenever I encounter any type of situation that I want to better understand, I do the 5 whys in my head. There are also some disadvantages of the 5 whys. First and foremost, it will not work on complex problems. It is simply a tool that is not structured to work on very complex problems. Next up, the results are not always repeatable. Depending who is on your team and the way that 5 whys are structured, different people, different teams will likely come up with different causes for the same problem. Finally, since the 5 whys is a linear approach, there's no ability to branch and look at different potential root causes to a problem using the 5 why method. So here's what a typical 5 whys looks like. You start by stating your problem statement at the top, and then once again, you just start asking why until no further credible path is established. And eventually you'll get down to a point where you'll determine what the best solution is to that problem. If you remember in lesson 1, we talked about the example of having stripped gears. And we don't want to just jump to the conclusion of replacing those stripped gears with new gears. Because if we do that, it's very likely, without understanding the causes for those stripped gears, that the gears will strip again in the future. So instead, we want to utilize the 5 why process to understand the causes for those stripped gears. And the process is very straightforward. You start out by putting your problem of stripped gears. The team then asks the question of why. In this particular case, the team determined that the gears were stripped because they were out of alignment. So why were the gears out of alignment? It was found that the bearing was wearing. So we ask why again. Why was the bearing wearing? Well, the preventive maintenance frequency had not been defined. So why was the PM frequency not defined? Well, it was considered that it was not important. At this point, we decide that there's no reason to ask why any further, and we determine our solution to be to define and perform our preventive maintenance. If we do this, it will prevent stripped gears in the future. Here is another example that we spoke about, a broken weld. So once again, we gather our team, we have our problem statement, a broken weld, and we ask why. Well, it was determined that it was an incorrect weld type. Why was it an incorrect weld type? Well, the weld type had not been defined. Why was the weld type not defined? Well, the application for this particular weld was not understood. And why was the application not understood? Well, it was not included on the intake form from the customer. Once again, after asking only 4 whys, we determine that there's no reason to go any further, and we are able to come up with a solution. And that solution would be is to update our customer intake form to indicate what the application will be for this product, so we better understand what type of weld to use. And now we come to our failed electrical component problem. In this particular case, it's easy to see that we have a failed electrical component. So why did we have a failed electrical component? Well, after doing an analysis on the circuit board, we determined that the cause for the failed electrical component was dendritic growth. Why did we have dendritic growth? Well, it was because the board was inadequately cleaned. And why was the board inadequately cleaned? Because the cleaning method for this board had not been defined. And why was the cleaning method for this board not defined? Well, the board cleanliness was not understood. And why was the board cleanliness not understood? Is because there was no board cleanliness test available. So the solution for this particular problem was to purchase and implement a board cleanliness test. By taking this approach, we'll be able to prevent dendritic growth failures in the future on our electrical components. When do we use the 5Y method? You use it for simple, straightforward problems or issues. You cannot use it for complex issues because it's a very linear approach, but it can be used anywhere, anytime, can be done in your head, and is the best starting point of any root cause analysis. Your exercise for this lesson is to complete a 5Y process for your problem statement.